This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day, wherever you're listening from, and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. This week is episode 572, and we welcome the ACGIH Executive Director, Frank Mortl, and their Director of Science and Education, Phillip Rauscher. And we're looking forward to a great show, getting updated on what ACGIH is up to these days and what we can look forward to here in the near future. But before we get started, let's thank our platinum sponsor.
IAQ Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, or restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com.
I also want to thank our gold sponsors, Particles Plus, Healthy Indoors Magazine, Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, and AEML Inc. Laboratory. And of course, our association sponsors, the Indoor Air Quality Association and the Restoration Industry Association.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man with this week's IAQ Radio Trivia question.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry to report there was no correct answer to last week's trivia question, which was to identify the countries in which each of the three editors of the Green Book were born. The IQ Radio Trivia question for today, Friday, January 31st, 2020, has been sponsored by Ideas, the solution chemistry company providing unique solutions to odor removal, surface cleaning, and decontamination problems. Here's today's IQ Radio Trivia question. In what year were ACGIH's first examinations held and certifications issued for comprehensive practice? Back to you, Joe.
All right, thank you, Cliff. I also forgot, for some reason, Siri Cleaning Industry Research Institute was not on the list of association sponsors there. Make sure we point them out. So today's guests are Frank Mortl. Frank is the executive director responsible for providing guidance and support to the board of directors while leading ACGIH's team of professionals who are committed to serving a membership that strives to deliver critically important industrial hygiene knowledge along a wide spectrum of topics ranging from air sampling instruments, bioaerosols, biological exposure indices, industrial ventilation, and threshold limit values for chemical substances and physical agents. Phillip Rauscher is their Director of Science and Education. Phil is an industrial hygienist, safety hygienist at the state of Ohio. I have to get this clarified. Division of Safety and Hygiene. He works primarily in the field, but he's now working with ACGIH. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Howdy.
Thrilled to be
Great to have both of you. Hey, let's start with Phil real quick. I'd like you to clarify for me your position. I pulled up an old bio and I kind of messed it up there.
Oh no, that's fine. So yeah, I was in the field up until July of last year. I worked with the state of Ohio, and in that capacity, I was a generalist. Whomever called us up, I would go out, provide industrial hygiene support, sometimes IAQ support, depending on the situation. Was lucky enough to meet Frank whenever we were at the conference together, and history took over from there. So now I'm here.
And you're a CIH, a CSP, and you got your master's in public health. Looks like you're an Ohio guy, Youngstown. Was it Youngstown State, maybe?
I went to Youngstown State for undergrad, and then I went over to the University of Toledo, right there on the border battle.
Great. Good for you. Good to have you, Phil. Let's go back to Frank. Frank, it's been a while since we talked about ACGIH. So what I'd like to do is start with, first let me stop the acronyms. The American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists. Who is ACGIH?
It's a great question, Joe, and we do have a rather clunky name, although it goes to show the degree of ACGIH does resonate through this industry that I've been able to be aware of here in my near-term tenure, been on board since February of last year, and ACGIH was and continues to be the point of contact for researchers, scientists, and academics to engage with a professional organization and to identify data, particularly regarding threshold limit values for chemical substances and physical agents. And that is our bread and butter, has been. But going forward, this organization, the board of directors, our volunteer leaders are looking to truly become an opportunity for, again, those scientists, researchers, and academics in the field of environmental health and safety, to give them the opportunity to define their science. And what does that mean, define their science? To advance, ACGIH is looking to advance the careers of professionals working in the occupational, environmental, industrial hygiene, and safety communities through engagement practices, opportunity to professionally educate and develop themselves through CM maintenance points, as well as our signature publications, which are known throughout the world to be, quite frankly, the gold standard of this type of industry data.
Interesting. And is that a little bit of a change from the past mission, I guess?
Yes and no. We've always felt internally, when I say we, the members that are strong with us, the leadership that have been with us, that we've had these opportunities. We're looking to engage and create a dialogue better with members, as well as what we consider to be customers or constituents, to better clarify all of the virtues of membership and or engagement. So I mentioned, for example, the opportunity to take a part in the role of the TLV development. You can serve on a committee, you could be a consultant, but you can also add comments. There's comment periods to the process of these significantly important TLVs on chemical substances or BEIs or physical agents. That's important. There's a way to engage, as well as I mentioned, the CM points. That scenario to capture all of your CM points as a member of ACGIH, you all have them. Everyone in this industry needs to capture those points. Those certification maintenance points are critical. They can all be captured through engagement with ACGIH, as well as the annual TLV book, the bioaerosols book that we're going to get into hopefully a little bit later, the industrial ventilation book that's updated every 3 years, as well as countless other important documents and publications that now instead of just being available, hardcover book, just last fall were introduced in an encrypted, safe digital format. So that's, again, part of this future opportunity that we're looking to add value to within the industry.
I think the word that oftentimes throws people off, and even me, is governmental. Why is that word in there? Maybe historically speaking, and I don't think people have to be part of government to be a member of ACGIH, but you can explain for listeners if you would.
Sure, they do not. And I say a clunky name. If you look at it at the core of each word, we're not American, we're international. We're not necessarily a conference. That's a term largely used at the turn of the last century. We're more of a professional society. Government, that used to be a mandate within our membership. That's no longer. Now, to be a member, a professional needs to currently spend greater than 50% of his or her employment in the field of occupational and environmental health and safety. So therefore, that takes out the IH element of it. Of course, we have components that are extremely relevant to the world of industrial hygienists. However, that's not a critical, that's not a part within our bylaws that requires someone to not only engage, but certainly to join the organization as a true active voting member.
Interesting. Okay. And Phil, let's jump over to you for a minute. I want to stick with the ACGIH for a moment, but I'm just curious. You worked in government before, and then you met up with Frank at, I don't know whether it was an ACGIH conference or a different conference, and started working with ACGIH. Had you been a member prior to your new role here?
Yes, I was. It's almost ironic that I was a government employee at the same time as being a member, but I was at AIH East, and that's where Frank and I met up.
Oh, the AIHA conference then. Okay. Does ACGIH have a conference?
We're actually co-sponsors of that very conference. If you go, we have a presence on the stage. We're there in full force. You can see us on the expo floor. You'll see my smiling face there this year. It's kind of the all-encompassing conference that we both work together on.
I see. I didn't realize that. I really only have been there a couple times and at the periphery, so I really wasn't that aware of it. I'm glad I asked the question. Let's go back to Frank for just a minute. How did ACGIH start, and why did it start?
Sure. It has a rich history. We're talking about the mid-1930s, ultimately incorporated in 1938. So we're 82 years old, and it really was trying to identify an unbiased, peer-reviewed process for data collection, particularly on the chemical sciences, substances rather, biological exposure indices, as well as physical agents. This was this opportunity to gather the data in a very rich format for community and collaboration and scientists gathering together. And that really maintains the hallmark of who we are now. We've had those particular committees, if you will, BEI, physical agents, chem subs. We also have an industrial ventilation committee, and reestablished just last year at the help of a dear friend of this program, Don Weeks, who is our board of director liaison to our bioaerosols committee. That was dormant for 15 long years. It's now back and extremely active. But those types of committees that were the hallmark of ACGIH back for 80 some years ago remain throughout the lifeblood and the core competencies of this organization today.
And let me clarify on the membership. So you have to be 50% in the field. I mean, being a researcher in the field, or maybe we can clarify, because I know Cliff had a follow-up on that.
Sure. Our bylaws explicitly state a professional who currently spends greater than 50% of his or her employment in the field of occupational and environmental health and safety. That's for a voting member. You could also be a professional who has retired from employment that involved greater than 50% of his or her time in the field, as well as a full-time student officially matriculated in an undergraduate or graduate program in environmental health, occupational health, and safety or related discipline. Those are the exact language from the bylaws for our voting members. And I suppose some of that could be subjective, but the terms field or professional or occupational, environmental health and safety is rather all-encompassing, and we like that, because we do feel that many, if not most, of our benefits and services can advance the careers of professionals involved within this field of science.
I see. Cliff, I think you had a question. Go ahead, Phil.
No, to follow up on Frank's point there, if you look at the volunteers on our committees, it's not a group of industrial hygienists per se. It's toxicologists, it's medical doctors. We have veterinary medical doctors on there. There are a lot of different professions that all play a role in what we do and how occupational health and safety expand.
I see. Cliff, I know you had a question on whether it would be for restoration people an appropriate kind of thing, but maybe you want to follow up on that.
Well, I think the question is, I guess it depends how you classify what people do. Decontamination of environments that are contaminated does have impact on health, does have impact on environments. And it would seem to me that what those people do most likely would qualify. And, perhaps if there was some outreach both ways, your organization would benefit, and I think you could get some new members as well.
Agreed. I mentioned a new hire to our staff here when before the show started. And we actually have identified a director of membership and communications to start with us this coming Monday, February 3rd. And that's your point, Cliff. This outreach feel is so important because there are just that many professionals around the world engaged in this type of life-saving, life improvement, worker safety opportunity around the world.
let's say some restoration folks decided, hey, I want to give ACGIH a shot and see what kind of science and education programs they have that would, help me further my career. Phil, can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, taking into account the fact that there are so many elements to restoration work, we cover a variety of topics. So, there's relevant guides to helping with mold remediation. Something I'm particularly excited about is the bioaerosols group getting back to work. Whenever they come out with their first BDAC and it's printed in the TLV book, that's going to change the world.
Whenever they come out with what? No, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Their first BDAC, their first TLV for a bioaerosol.
Okay. What's a BDAC? I want to make biological.
Biologically derived airborne contaminants.
There you go. All right. I'll get the acronym police on you here, Phil. All right. Very interesting. Now, do you have any educational programs, either online or courses that people can attend, or is it all related around the bioaerosols book and the TLVs and some of the other products you have?
Oh no, we have a wide variety. We actually have a whole array of webinars coming up this year. The first one that's going to be coming up here, the first one that's coming up is actually on the TLV book. But then we have one in March that's coming up that's about computational fluid dynamics and industrial ventilation. Towards the end of the year, we have one on cold stress. And if you look back into our archived webinars, there's a number of topics that are covered there as well, including a number of IAQ issues.
I see. Okay, good to hear. Cliff, did you have anything you wanted to add with respect to our restoration friends there?
No, I think we'll wait till the new communication person gets in and we'll take it from there.
Okay, let's move on a little bit to the TLV. Just let's start with the basics. Either Frank or Phil, whoever's better to answer this. The TLVs, or threshold limit values, first of all, how do they relate to permissible exposure limits, and how often are they revised?
Yeah, so I'll hop on this one. It's hard to divorce the two. Many of the current TLs were actually born from the work of ACGIH volunteers. OSHA adopted the 1971 TLVs almost verbatim. Obviously, the PL is the law and you have to follow it, but the TLV is based solely on the science of risk assessment. So, a lot's changed since 1971. Risk assessment, occupational health research has been growing and learning new things. The PLs largely got stuck there. So for that reason, the most progressive, forward-thinking OELs that you can find are usually ours. Our volunteers work diligently to provide occupational limits that, someone can be exposed to day after day without health effects. And by OSHA's own admission, that's not what the PEL is.
If you go to court and someone's claiming an exposure that, caused some kind of medical issue, are the TLVs going to hold up as well as a PEL if you're trying to show that, I wasn't exposed above the PEL, but the TLVs are more current and more commonly revised. And I do think I was exposed somewhere around the TLV. Does that hold up well?
I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Gotcha.
So I'll start off with that. We do have a very vigorous process. I was just talking about it the other day, and people are surprised by how much goes into that. It's first, if it's a chemical substance, first it goes through a subcommittee. The subcommittee largely has to almost unanimously agree on that the TLV is correct that they're going to propose, that all of the studies that go into it are the most robust that they can use. Then that goes to the full chemical substance committee, where 30 people have that same debate. They have to vote to send that up to the board. The board votes that they agree with the committee, and that's where we get an NIC. It's not even a TLV yet. So we open it up to the world and ask for comments. If there's better research out there or something that we missed, we want to hear about it. We bring that in and use that to go back, reevaluate it, and if we believe that the science that we picked, our volunteers used, is the most robust, is the best evidence we can get, the committee votes on it again, votes to send it back to the board, and the board finally then agrees that all the due diligence has been done and it can move forward as a TLV. So it's a very vigorous process.
Now, do the TLVs get reviewed and revised on a regular schedule, or does it occur when new information comes in, or how does that work?
A hybrid, actually. It can come from, we welcome public comments on that. Anything that's on the understudy list, someone can send us information on. If someone believes something should go understudy, by all means, reach out to us. My email is science@acgih.org. Send me that information. Beyond that, we have a selection committee whenever it comes to chemical substances, and they actually pick what's going to move forward at the request of the world, committee members, anywhere we can get that information, we take it into account.
Okay. All right. And Frank, did you want to add anything there?
No, other than to say to Phil's point about the legalese, it's our understanding that a number of our what we consider volunteer leaders, if you will, have served and continue to serve as expert witnesses. And again, it's our understanding that in some of those situations, they will draw upon the TLVs. Now, does that make it something to your question about an absolute? I don't believe it does, but I think it does. Those TLVs, those BEIs, they carry significant weight. And in our opinion, and the opinion for 82 plus years of our growth and leadership and opportunities through the leading scientists around the world, they should carry that type of weight.
How big is your membership, Frank? I'm just curious. Are you a couple thousand?
That's right. Couple thousand right now. And again, with ambition to grow that. But I can tell you, those that are members of ours have been members for a long time. If we're able to secure someone for a year, 2 years, they don't leave for 15, 20, 30 years. It's astounding to me, the longevity that has been achieved through the membership base here. We're just looking to identify that next generation, those millennials, scientists, those new investigators, those Gen Xers, if you will, to not only identify why they should participate, but to engage. We want to look to, and we are now starting our social media channels through our enhanced communication systems, through what we hope to be a better website, but an updated website here soon, a better way to dialogue, to listen as much as we get out information. That I think is critically important in this nonprofit world that we're looking to advance. And we've got, again, some strategic planning that will occur later this year that will touch on many of those themes.
You know, we hear a lot about the TLVs. I don't hear as much about the BEIs. What is it? Biological exposure indices, maybe. I hope I got that right.
Right.
Can one of you talk a little bit more about the BEIs? Because I think a lot of our listeners work more often with, mold-related issues and indoor air quality, and also water damage restoration, where they're dealing with sewage and biological organisms. And I'm wondering if you can maybe tell listeners a little bit about the BEIs.
Good question. I'll throw this one back to my expert.
Yeah, so the BEIs are actually based off of our chemical substances, TLVs. What they are is it's actually, so if there is a biological indicator that can be used that might be more of a holistic view. So, for example, if you measure how much of a particular chemical you're breathing in on the IH side, you look at that, just look at how much is in the air. But if there's a skin notation or there's significant amount that's ingested, I've seen it out there in the field. Somebody drinking coffee right in their workplace, and you can see the sheen of chemical over the top of it. The BEI takes it one step further and actually looks for, is there some kind of a tracker in urine, blood, exhaled air that can look at the overall picture of the body burden that someone is suffering.
I got you. Okay, so it's more our own biology, not necessarily looking at biological exposures?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
I
is
will
there
say,
any?
though,
Go ahead.
There's been a lot of changes in the past couple of years. The BDAC is one that I'm looking forward to coming up. The biological, derived air contaminants and their limits. But a big one that's caused quite a splash is the new surface limits. Take it one step further. Be proactive. Look at, all right, if it's on your work surface, if you're touching it, what are we going to do to protect you beyond just looking at how much you're inhaling or looking at what you've been exposed to already?
Phil, I want to go through a field discussion for a moment. I've got a friend. He works in a building, let's say, that it has a pool in it, a swimming pool. And he's concerned that, he smells the chlorine smell quite often, and he's wondering if that's bad for him. And they seem to have a little trouble breathing in there from time to time. I'm wondering if you could kind of walk us through how someone like you that worked in the field would handle that, and how maybe some of the TLVs might tie into the work you're doing.
Yeah, so the first thing is to go back, look at their HAZCOM program, see what they have in place already, and then compare that directly to the TLVs. In this case, there's a very strong indication that it's probably chlorine. People usually make that connection in their mind. They smell chlorine, now they have irritation. Those two go hand in hand. But you can go back, look at the documentation, read in there, how did we get to our TLV? Why is it picked? What are the physiological changes that can happen being exposed at the TLV, above the TLV rather, and that helps you make a good risk assessment decision. Another thing that ties into the IAQ issue with that is keep a log of when these things happen. If you see that it's happening Monday, well, maybe they put the chemical in on Sunday, and you should think about changing when you put that in. Is it an hour afterwards? Is it 2 hours after? There's a lot of things you can do to hopefully prevent that from turning into a serious issue.
Okay. And now if I looked at some of the background information, would I find the best way to sample for that particular exposure?
So no part of our process is actually suggesting what someone uses as an analytical method.
Okay.
We don't do that just because, that's up to the professional in the field. If they have a certain situation where a specific analytical method would work better, we want them to use that and then draw the conclusion back to our TLV.
Okay, very good. I think we're getting kind of close to halftime, but before we break, Frank, I want to come back and talk a little bit more about the organization, and then for the second half, I'd like to talk more about the TLVs and particularly the bioaerosols book. But I'm just curious, we've been talking about it. What kind of investment am I looking at to become a member of ACGIH?
Excellent question. So currently it's a individual professional membership, $205 for a year. And with that, again, you have opportunity to receive a number of complimentary scenarios whether it's the annual TLV book, BEI book, whether it's downloads of documentation, the journal. We have our own, in conjunction with AIHA, the Journal of Occupational Environmental Hygiene. Through that comes an at-home self-study continuing education program to earn 12 contact hours of CM credits, but it's $205 for a membership. And beyond that, we have these webinars that we're touching on. And at some point, perhaps we can dig a little deeper into that, or to Cliff's point, we're going to look to communicate what exactly those webinars are throughout this year. But where in the past, we and other like-minded associations, nonprofit organizations would charge $250 or more for a webinar. We decided that just doesn't make sense for our particular constituency. We're charging $99 per webinar for every webinar, whether it's 1.2, 2 contact hours, doesn't matter. Those are the types of investment options that we're looking at for professional individuals. For an organization that's in this world of environmental health and safety, $650 for an organization membership, which earns 10 times the amount of benefits that an individual would. as well as student memberships for $30 or retiree memberships for $50. Those are the investment opportunities that we look at to participate currently with ACGIH.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. I'm getting some people saying there's a reverb, but I'm not hearing it. John, maybe we can talk while we're on our halftime here. We're going to stop and thank our sponsors for halftime. We'll be back in 90 seconds with the second half of our interview with the ACGIH Executive Director and their Director of Science and Education. We've got Frank Mortl and Phil Rauscher. We'll be right back.
IAQ Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at johndon.com. That's JONDON.com. Gold sponsors are Particles Plus Engineers and Manufacturers, feature-rich particle counters and air quality monitoring instrumentation. Learn more at particlesplus.com. Count on us. Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions available at healthyindoors.com. And AEML Laboratories, free FedEx shipping, great pricing, same-day results, and never a rush fee. Learn more at AEMLinc.com. Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, who use advanced sensor software technology and embedded computers to provide superior environmental test instrumentation. Visit them at wolfsense.com. Association sponsors are the Indoor Air Quality Association, a multidisciplinary organization dedicated to promoting the exchange of indoor environmental information through education and research. Learn more at IAQA.org. And RIA, the Restoration Industry Association, the granddaddy of the restoration industry. Network with leaders. Learn more at restorationindustry.org.
I forgot to look for it, but I've got my little TLV book here somewhere. Also, this one's always right here, my bioaerosols book. So let's talk a little bit about bioaerosols, gentlemen. What's going on with the Bioaerosols Committee? What can we look forward to? This book came out in 1999, I believe.
Sure did. That's a long time ago. And like I said earlier, we have reestablished what we consider to be just a tremendous group of individuals looking to advance the bioaerosol community on behalf of ACGIH, led by some folks that I think this program is familiar with. Sherry Marsham is the chair of our Bioaerosols Committee. Jack Springston, recent guest for IAQ Radio, was vice chair. And Don Weeks on our board of directors is what we consider our board liaison. They join Al Condello, John Kraus, Steve Larson, Bud Offerman, Paul Evans, and Jim Kornberg as members of our Bioaerosols Committee currently, although that could change, not with any subtractions, but hopefully with some additions here as we get the word out for the progress of this committee. That group is looking currently to update the bioaerosols book, and we know how important that can be and needs to be for professionals in this world. Is that going to happen later this year, next year? Probably not. At this point, we're looking at either late 21 or more than likely 2022 for a fully comprehensive update to the bioaerosols book. And won't that be a pleasure for folks in the environmental health and safety world?
Absolutely. I mean, the mold area gets revisions quite frequently. Like the AI, we have a show next week with Dr. J. David Miller. The Green Book has been revised. That's coming back out. I know you work pretty closely with AIHA, but I don't know that if people realize that the bioaerosols book is a much broader look at biological organisms. It's not just mold-centric. And a lot of that stuff, I agree with you, Frank, has not been really updated, certainly not by the bioaerosols book. But I mean, in general, we don't have one place where we can go to look for information on, dust mites and all the other types of bioaerosols that people run into doing this type of work. Phil, are you involved in that project too?
So that's actually led by our volunteers. I'm not a world expert on biological air contaminants. I've dabbled in it enough to be awed at the absolute ingenious of all of our volunteers. So I'm very close with that project, but I can't say I'm taking the lead on it. That's our volunteers.
Okay. And Frank, I know there's some crossover between the folks that worked on the Green Book and the folks that are working, I think, on your bioaerosols book. Did ACGIH have any formal role in working with AIHA on revising that Green Book?
I wouldn't say we had a formal role, but I'll take it another step further. So where we now have established this bioaerosol committee, it went live. I think their first meeting was in September of last year. They've been so active. Typically, committees meet 2, maybe 3 times a year. This group is meeting every month. They're not in person. They're going to meet for the first time in person in March. But they're meeting every month from an hour and a half to 2 hours conference call. And one of the most recent, I'm talking within the last 10 days, accomplishments is a collaborative opportunity presented to and embraced by AIHA leadership. My counterpart there, who I've had a tremendously positive working relationship with, Larry Sloan, their elected chair, Kathy Murphy, and my elected chair, Mary Lopez, along with the leadership on this bioaerosols team of this committee of ours, are looking to engage and collaborate on not just our bioaerosols book, but how we can create more formality into the Green Book process and perhaps identify some authors and create some transparent acknowledgement of this type of formal collaboration. We're very, very proud of this. This is something I came into the industry hoping with her. I'm sure it's no secret that there had been some rough edges, if you will, between ACGIH and AIHA over the last many years, many decades, if you will. And we're looking to overcome that in a very constructive way. And just, again, recently, this tangible evidence of collaboration and the opportunity to work better together. Why? To benefit the end user professional in this industry, in this world of, in this case, biologically derived airborne contaminants, I think is tremendously, tremendously important and impactful.
Interesting. Now, I'm curious as far as ACGIH and the bioaerosols book. Where have you kind of had an evaluation of areas that kind of need the most work, or is that stuff that's going on right now with the committee?
It's literally going on right now with the committee. They're taking a broad view. Again, they started these discussions, these formal committee discussions in September. I believe they've had 5 meetings since then, which is very, very ambitious for volunteers. You know how just getting schedules set up can be a rather arduous task, but nevertheless, they are meeting frequently with regularity. I give a lot of credit to Sherry Marsham, Jack Springston. Their leadership has been impeccable. But Phil, perhaps you can touch on a little bit more of some of the meat of what they're talking about. But to your point, Joe, that they're looking at everything within the bioaerosols book. A lot of that overlap between the Green Book and what our very comprehensive bioaerosols book is looking to not only touch on, but improve upon. Phil, where else do you think that there might be some meat on the bone?
Another thing, so whenever everybody gets their 2020 TLV book, they've revamped the whole beginning of that, which lays the foundation for a lot of change to come, and I hopefully invites individuals to participate in the process and send us their feedback for the understudy, or where they think it should go.
Back when this first came out, and Frank, and I know you're very new, so you may not be that familiar with it, but it seemed like the bioaerosols book, if I remember correctly, caused a little bit of consternation, let's say, for people within the industry. Like there was some, if I recall correctly, there might have been some concerns about like disinfection and things like that. Is that all over with? Does ACGIH ever get, complaints about stuff that's in the bioaerosols book other than saying revise it?
The major theme, of course, is 1999 was a long time ago. We need some updates. In terms of some of those specific complaints, I personally haven't come across those, but I'm aware that they've been out there. The overall theme, and something that's been impressed upon me, not just from day one, but back when I was getting interviewed for this terrific position, I was interviewing the search committee as much as they were interviewing me. And one of the themes, again, that was so not just important, but impressed upon me was process. Everything that goes on within ACGIH is done at the highest level of transparent and honest process. And so when we talk about if there are complaints, if there are ways to update, we encourage that feedback. We're not trying to deny it. We're encouraging any of that information that we then can use, both from a volunteer standpoint and a staff execution standpoint, to better not only our publications, but the way that these contributions are made to capture this data and disseminate it in a very succinct way that can be useful in the hands of professionals as they look to advance their careers in this industry.
You know, I got a text from a listener saying that they're impressed and appreciate the new communication activities. And that leads me to a question. You're trying to bring in a younger generation here. The industrial hygiene and safety world is, you know, really, a lot of us are getting older. I certainly am ready for some retirement time myself here eventually. But what type of things, how is it different to try and recruit new, younger members versus the old school folks?
A lot of it, it's a great question. A lot of it, and these are basic nonprofit best practices that I'm bringing to the table here at ACGIH, and I'm not trying to invent anything. I'm looking to improve. I'm kind of like Larry David in that scenario. I'm looking to polish things, not necessarily create new. And it's the digital. It's the opportunity to become a virtual part of the overall cog within the machine here. It's having the ability where it's so challenging, and it's not like necessarily the old days, to jump on a plane and fly to Cincinnati, fly to Chicago, get to Dallas, New York, West Coast. It needs to be done on a digital level, an electronic means of communication. We're looking to not only heighten those mechanisms with our data analytics and taking a hard look at metrics and how those KPIs can all play a part in what we do from a staff standpoint, but from the volunteers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and so on, how can they contribute virtually? We have a group, a workforce, if you will, a work group that is developing and looking how to develop a TLV app. Wouldn't that be a game changer? If you could get all of the TLVs, the BEIs, calculations, contributions, collaboration with industry peers all on your phone. That's really, that's a big part of the next step. Imagine if I could say, hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, what's the TLV for XYZ? What's the TLV for beryllium or for mercury, what have you? That's the next phase for ACGIH that we are working every day literally on, to be able to communicate at a much heightened level. And why? Again, to benefit that end user in the field.
Absolutely. What about, are you guys on Twitter and all that, Instagram, or what?
We certainly are. We have our opportunities on all four of the major platforms that we consider relevant. And then nonprofit world, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we're posting daily. And with the new hire here coming out next week, we'll not only increase, but the content, the impact of the content. We're trying to get away from how can we communicate something that will dip into the pocket or the wallet of a member or constituents. We want to find campaigns and stories and reasons, again, to not just listen and hear about what ACGIH has to offer. We want to create this dialogue. We're looking to do that now. We've made strides, we've made improvements, but this is a big year. 2020 is a big year for ACGIH to have 2 long weekends for 80 to 100 people gathering together, and our core leadership, our board of directors, our committee chairs, and our committee vice chairs meeting on heavy strategic planning thought and directives for our next 3 to 5 years. That's a big deal, and we're excited about it, and we think we've got the right people in place to make some effective, positive change.
How is the organization financially? Are you solid?
Very solid. I tell you, we've had now 3 years straight of healthy opportunities in our financial to build up our reserves. We're not looking to bank every dollar. We're looking to turn these dollars into new programming. And again, that's how we're able to offer complimentary, if you will, at-home self-study, 12 SAM points a year through our action level in the Journal of Occupational Environmental Health. That's how we're able to offer 10 webinars at $99 a pop. That's how we're able to offer these signature publications that are so critical to the field, as well as these enhanced communication models, and most importantly, beef up our staff. We were too thin. To have 8, 9, maybe 10 staff members is not enough to execute the vision of a very ambitious leadership. That's the future of ACGIH, and it's strong currently, but we need more participants. Members, yes, we need more people to engage with us, member or not. identify how the virtues of member benefit packages can help them every day in their occupation.
What other publications do you have that would be of interest to like the indoor air quality people? I mean, you've mentioned a few already, but let's kind of summarize that again, if you would.
Sure, and Phil, help me if I miss any here, but I'll list off our core signature publications. Of course, the TLV's and BEI's book. We have a guide to occupational exposure values. The industrial ventilation book for design as well as for operation and maintenance. That's the gold standard on industrial ventilation. That's updated every 3 years. We have an air sampling instruments book, an air sampling technologies book, the bioaerosols book, assessment and control. We've talked about that at length today. That is in the process of being updated. And won't that be effective, not only in a hard copy book like you've got on the shelf there, Joe, but in the palm of your hand or at your tablet or at your PC.
All right, let's jump over to Frank. Final thoughts or questions? Well,
the thought is that the long, arduous task it took to come up with 3 words last year, and we're very proud of these 3 words: define your science. Imagine if you're someone that's dedicated to a career, being a researcher, a scientist, or someone in the academic field of environmental health and safety, and there was an organization, it doesn't even cost, it's $17 a month, $200 a year. Right? Really, when you look at it at the brass tacks, to have an organization, have a resource. If you're involved with bioaerosols, biological exposure indices, industrial ventilation, physical agents, or any of the following chemical substances, chemical selection, dust and inorganics, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, compounds, ACGIH provides an opportunity to define what it is that you're doing in the world professionally. What a really great resource to have at your disposal and to make a difference in the future of what we as human beings on planet Earth breathe and hear and see. That's who ACGIH is going forward today and hopefully into a very strong, prosperous future.
Well, Frank and Phil, thank you, gentlemen. It's been very nice to meet both of you. I really appreciate that. And you're over in Cincinnati. You're not far from us. Cliff's in Pittsburgh. I'm up in Central City, Pennsylvania. We have a little thing called the Healthy Building Summit in October. We just set the dates. It'll be October 12 through 14 this year at Seven Springs Resort. You guys may be familiar with that. It's a little, we call it practice to research, where our practitioner crowd comes to tell our research crowd, here's what we need from you guys, and it might be a good fit for ACGIH. So we'll keep you posted on that, and hopefully
as I said to Don Weeks recently, I'd like to talk about what it would take for us to become a sponsor of this great program. I've enjoyed, we'll talk about a learning curve for Frank. In the last year, I've listened to countless archive programs. So let's talk about what we can do to get heavier involved.
We would very much appreciate that, gentlemen. And we appreciate both of you joining us today on IAQ Radio. Frank Mortl and Phil Rauscher from ACGIH. I want to thank my engineer, John. You pulled it off at the controls. Even with the flu, he can do it. These millennials, they're just something else, buddy. Thank you, John. My co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick, and our growing group of loyal listeners. Gentlemen, thanks again for joining us. We'll be back. Next Friday, we've got J. David Miller. We're going to go over some revisions to the AIHA Green Book, so that'll be another great show. We'll see you all back here next Friday at noon for the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.